Miguel, Singing Tree Flutes. I'm demonstrating a G Aeolian minor black Limba flute. This is almost always in stock on my website. Love this design. It's great, consistent sound quality, double octave range that I can get real consistent. And so I want to just describe a little bit about how to play this flute and the differences between a Native American style flute. The fingering is a little bit different. So you want to, instead of holding this ring finger down that we were always taught with that Native American style flute, you have to now play it similar to a penny whistle or Middle Eastern flutes. All other flutes, the Cana flute, are all played in this finger order, which is like this, doom, 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 all the way up the scale. Top note being all fingers covered except the top hole. Okay, so. That's pretty basic stuff right there. And so again, if you just are comfortable playing Native American flute, you're gonna probably forget that once in a while. And it's not exactly in tune that way. So you're gonna want to remember that. And that top note, there's 3 different ways to achieve that. I find that I have the best results when I go down to half hole that one for that high octave G. Here's the low G, and here's the high G. Just a little crack. That's the same as lifting it off, but sometimes when I lift it off all the way, and it has something to do with how far I bring the holes down away from where the sound is produced. If I'm too light on it, it'll stay at the low octave. And we don't want that to happen. You have to push it. And if you half hole it, you won't ever have that issue. So while you're playing this flute and you're getting used to it, see, I didn't blow high enough. If I wanted that high, you got to push a little bit harder. Something to keep in mind. But if you half hole it, it'll always blow to the high octave, even if you're playing a little gently. And the other way to achieve that high G is just simply by blowing harder. So you just push that T. And that's something that I work on a lot, is to have a solid note, a solid foundation on your flute. Keep that low G pretty solid when you're playing. But you want it to blow over. Some people, there's certain well-known flute makers out there, Native American style flute makers, that you can almost never overblow it. Some people think that that's great, but in these cases, with these ones that you're especially trying to get high octave ranges, and my drone flutes and everything like that, I like to have that pop over to the high octave relatively easy. I mean, we don't want it to be, you have to be holding back so much that it's difficult to play, but you want to be able to pop it up to that high octave so that you can get much more dynamics out of your flute, especially if you have one of these guys where it has almost a 2 full octave range. And so we'll show you that right now. That's a really cool thing about these flutes. I'd say probably 2 out of every 10 flutes will get the full octave range out of these G Aeolians. All the rest get all the way up to here, but that top hole here tends to not want to overblow on a lot of flutes. But that's going to take some practice. It's not as simple as just kicking that over and then doing all the things you're used to. I see a lot of skilled Native American style flute players that try to transfer their mouth techniques and things like that into these flutes. In some cases you can do that, but once you get into that high octave range, what I've noticed is that you really have to, once you kick it up to that high octave, you have to hold the pressure, which is a pretty intense pressure. We're used to playing pretty gently, like somewhere in there. And on the top, when you get up to the higher registers of this high octave range, you are pushing more like really aggressively pushing into that flute in order to hold that high octave range as you're going up the scale. And so here's an example. If I go sort of half breath, once I click it to the high octave, so once it's there, then I can start lifting my fingers. But if I'm too gentle on that, I'll eventually lose the octave range and it'll fall back down to the low octave range. Does that make sense? See, so it gets up halfway up there pretty easily, and then it starts falling off unless you really push that pressure. And like I said, in most cases, just expect that it'll go 5 holes up your high octave range on these G Aeolian minors. This one in particular is a 432 hertz. So, but this one actually goes all the way. Like I said, probably 2 out of the 10 flutes that I make do that. So again, holding that pressure, pushing a little bit hard there. More aggressive as you go up to scale. Okay, that's something to practice. And again, if I've seen people, if they go, here's how I play a Native American flute. On the top notes, I do that a lot on Native American style flute. If I'm in the high octave register of these Aeolian flutes, I do not do that because that interruption with the airflow tends to make it fall off of the high octave range. So keep that in mind. Playing that, it's good to just push it and use your finger technique and maybe breath technique to give it the flavor that you want. But if you do too much, like a lot of us like to do when we're performing, you might drop off, especially in a performance. And I've embarrassed myself a couple times where I try to hit that highest note and then it just goes, into the low octave, and it's not too pleasant when that happens, especially when you're blowing that hard on a flute. So again, maybe I can show you an example of what it would be like in the high octave range if you use the T sound that we're used to. See how it interrupts in there? It's not consistent. So if I hold it, remember now, it's always in that order, top and bottom. Everything that you're hearing me do is, if I'm playing any notes, all of the notes underneath it are uncovered. That's what you got to keep in mind. So.